Good morning. I'm Sue Leeson, Senior Justice on the Oregon Supreme Court.
Good afternoon. I think it's noon it's one where you are. And noon where we are. Good afternoon. My name is Beth Ratway. I am a Senior Technical Assistance Coordinator for the American Institutes for Research. It's nice to be here.
All right, I'm going to ask the team, Phil, if you'll introduce yourselves.
I'm John Finsett.
My name is Braden Becker.
Okay.
Is that it? Just the two?
I think we might be having some
tech issues. I'm Devlin Cassidy. Collectively, we represent the Commonwealth of Kentucky and represent Highlands High School. And Miss Boyman-Henny.
I'm sorry, judges. I'm going to call in. I can't hear anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So Devlin, do you want to introduce yourself again?
Yeah, so I'm Devlin Cassidy. We represent Highlands High School in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and our coach is Miss Boyman-Henny.
Great. We have a few minutes, so because we started a little bit early, so when Ben gets on, he can introduce himself.
Where's Highlands?
It's right across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. So we're about 2-3 miles away from right there. So very northern part of Kentucky.
Okay.
My spouse used to say technology is great when it works. Is that ever true?
That's
That's
all
true. My dad says the same thing. It's all good.
Same thing. Yeah, I really admire you guys doing this under these circumstances. It's got to be so frustrating. How will we know when Ben is with us?
we had the same problem yesterday. Actually, there should be another window that pops up on audio.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone come in yet, so I'm looking, waiting to see one.
It's fine. We had issues yesterday too. We always get through.
Yeah.
You guys could tell us your answer to question 4 today. Oh,
Yeah,
you didn't
right.
prepare 4 questions. You only did 2 questions. Oh.
Ben's saying that he's trying to call in right now, but he's on hold.
Oh,
So
no.
I think he's trying to find the right meeting here.
Okay. He's not calling into this one, so hold on. Let me contact the supervisor and see what's going on.
We'll get it figured out.
Okay, I've contacted the supervisor to see if they know a better way to do it, because nothing's coming up on the screen of anyone. So I know he said he's getting a hold message, but there's nothing for me to click. Tim, are you there?
Oh,
Hi. Ben here is trying to log in by phone, and I'm not seeing anything to let him in.
all right. So Ben currently is not in. Does he have the phone number?
He's in on video, but his audio is not working, so he's trying to call in on his phone as well.
All right, let's see here. I think I see here. Let's try
Oh,
this.
I see him now.
That's what happens when you call him in. It just pops up. It's the gift of Tim.
Okay, yes, thank you, Tim. As soon as you came in here, now I see the phone call. Ben, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
can you speak
Ben,
up?
can you talk again?
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah, Ben, as long as you're kind of speaking into the phone, it sounds like we can hear you and we're going to make it work.
Absolutely.
All right. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Not your problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Ben, if you would go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then the judges are going to start the hearing.
Hi, I'm Ben Leckie.
Okay, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and read the question. We're going to be doing question 2 from Unit 2. One founder claimed that representatives should refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of the chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? What alternative systems of representation were considered by the founders? What alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered in the 21st century? You may begin.
We agree with James Madison's claim that representative republics are the best methods of governance, as long as the representatives are representative of the will of the people. This view is consistent with the Declaration of Independence in that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, and the formation of the Constitution by we the people. Ultimate sovereignty should lie with the people, although it must be periodically delegated for practicality and safety according to their conscious choice.
This panel argues that representatives should act on their own judgment while their powers are derived from the people and simultaneously accountable to them. This statement is echoed by Edmund Burke in his speech to the electors of Bristol. Your representative owes you his judgment and betrays you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. Representatives should adopt the trustee model of representation, which would best shield the government from the impulse of sudden and violent passions, as Madison warns.
Representation scholar Jane Mansbridge noted that naturally, constituents choose representatives to negotiate more perceptively and fight more skillfully. Representatives are accountable to the people at elections, but require their own judgment for skillful and safe functioning of the government. As political theorist Nancy Schwartz wrote, representative forms of democracy have their own uses, functioning not just as transmissions belt for constituent opinion.
Stability is further implemented in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which sets senatorial terms at 6 years. Although representatives should act on their own judgment throughout their terms, they must avoid, as Federalist 62 describes, a situation where those who administer it, a Republican government, may forget their obligations to their constituents and prove unfaithful to their important trust. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 2 allows for the re-election of 1/3 of the senators every 2 years, which strikes a balance between the need for stability and the country's changing needs and values. For much of the antebellum period, the Senate maintained compromise after compromise, forestalling the violent Civil War.
Throughout the Constitutional Convention, the two main systems of representation presented were James Madison's Virginia Plan and William Patterson's New Jersey Plan. Article 2 of the Virginia Plan stated that representatives would be apportioned according to population, and Article 6 established federal supremacy by giving the legislature the ability to negative state laws. The New Jersey Plan was based on Patterson's idea that when independent societies confederate for mutual defense, they do so in their collective capacity by representing all the states equally in a unicameral legislature.
The resulting Great Compromise proposed by Roger Sherman combined these plans into the modern organization of Congress and saved the convention by 1 vote. Madison believed this compromise departed from justice to conciliate the smaller states. Arguably, the most impactful debate was over slavery. Sectional tensions caused the admission of a condemnation of the slave trade in the Declaration of Independence. Southern states wanted to increase their representation in Congress by counting slaves toward their voting totals. The convention agreed on the 3/5 compromise, where 3/5 of the slave population contributed toward representation.
In his farewell address, George Washington warned against the alternate triumphs of different parties to make the public administration the mirror of the ill-concerted and incongruous projects of faction. Today's dual party system often leaves voters with only two realistic choices instead of choosing someone who realistically represents their views.
According to a Gallup poll in early 2021, only 33% of Americans think today's political parties do an adequate job of representing them. Ranked choice voting should be considered as an alternative system of representation because it allows Americans to choose a wider variety of candidates who may more closely espouse to their views. According to a study done by Professor David Kimball, ranked choice voting resulted in a 10-point increase in general election. This system allows more people to select more choices, leading them to more accurate representation. All citizens should be able to select as many candidates to represent them, act on their own judgment, and be accountable to the people. Thank you, and we are ready now for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So many things to ask. So you started your presentation with the trustee model, that they would bring good judgment, and it should be based on their opinions. Do you believe that that's the best direction that we should believe that we should see in our representatives today, or do you think we should move more towards a belief in the delegate model? How would you like to see your representative? Is it more a trustee model or a delegate, or a combination of the two?
I think all representatives will realistically act according to the Politico model with a combination of both. But I believe that the representatives are already accountable to the people at elections, and we have elections every 6 years, senators every 2 years for House reps. So I believe that while they're in office, they should be able to use the information that they have, which in many cases we won't have if it's national security or other things like that, to make the choices that they see best.
I think it's important that we place our voting into, we place the voting that we choose into representatives that we believe can act on best interest of the people, instead of having someone with that lack of resources or compared to someone, in these representative positions to make decisions. And, these decisions shouldn't be made from people who, are not as in tune or don't have as many resources or access to information as these other representatives do.
Thank you. Sue?
The constitutional provision that House members serve 2-year terms has the practical effect today of people are sworn into office and they immediately are campaigning for re-election. Most members of the House spend more than half their time fundraising to run for re-election. Does that undermine any theory of representation, whether it's delegate or trustee? What should we be doing about that?
In my opinion, sorry.
Brandon.
Okay. I don't think we should have to do anything about that because they have an election. They have to run for re-election, and the election acts as term limits essentially for them. And they have to be doing a well enough job to be re-elected. And if the people feel they are being represented well enough, they should be allowed to keep them in.
I do think that money in politics and the length of elections in the United States is a huge problem, not just for House terms, but also for presidential elections, where campaigning begins, more than a year out from it. And I do believe that takes time away from the representatives from what they were doing to then, working on getting reelected and working on campaigning. So I would definitely support some restriction of the money in politics or the amount of time that you have to campaign,
As opposed to extending the length of the term.
I don't believe that the length of the term should be extended. I think it's the term length is good. I think the problem is the money in politics and the party system.
Super. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to ask about the two-party system, since you brought it up towards the end of your presentation. How much of a hindrance is the two-party system right now, and are there ways to encourage greater number of third parties to become active in politics?
I think the ranked choice voting we proposed at the end of our opening statement was the best way to get more third parties involved. Ranked choice voting was used in Alaska and a few counties throughout the United States. in different states other than Alaska in the past election. Ranked choice voting works as a system of where it's instead of as a winner takes all. Originally, if the voting is split, let's say between three candidates, where it's 40%, 40%. I'm trying to do the math. So like 40%, 40%, and then 20%. So there's no one that has a greater advantage over that. The person that gets 20% is eliminated. And then, so if you voted for that person with the 20%, that vote's casted out. And then who's ever next on your list for your voting, that would go into the second round. And then if that person that you voted for ends up getting an above 50% majority, they can win the election. So what it does is it ultimately, so if we're putting in today's political spectrum of Democrat versus Republican, we're seeing more ways for third party people such as libertarian. If someone's more on the conservative side and believes more in libertarian views, they would have to end up, as it is today, voting for that Republican to have a real fair shot and representation in the election.
I think
go ahead, Ben.
I think a problem that you brought up in your question that we see with the two-party system is almost that predetermined outcome of an election, like such as here in Kentucky with, Mitch McConnell versus basically anyone who he's ran against in this time he's been here. With it doesn't encourage voter turnout, for people to vote for, like, as the most recent Democratic nominee was Amy McGrath. It kind of predetermines that, well, he's been here for as long as he's going to be here. He's going to continue to win. With this ranked choice voting, it encourages voters to, come and vote for maybe a different party or, spice it up a little bit.
Along with what my colleagues said, people often joke about having to vote for the lesser of two evils. And I've heard that a lot over the past couple of presidential elections. And the big conclusion from ranked choice voting is you can pick somebody that you really like and still have safety that your vote is going to count for something.
So I've seen the ballots. I've seen other ballots. And do you think we can do that? Do you think we can do like a full out election, national election using that type of ballot? We have so many, and I'm not saying this is an excuse. I just want to think with you about seeing a ranked choice ballot. What's that going to take to make that happen here in the United States on a national scale rather than a state by state scale?
I think we can certainly try. Like Louis Brandeis said, we have 50 laboratories of democracy around the United States where, individual states can give the ranked choice system a try, see how it works, and then it could be generalized up to the national scale.
Who would do that generalizing? I mean, states are in control of elections in this country. There are no national elections. There are elections for national officers held in the states. So how do we get to a national ranked choice short of every state just adopts it because it seems to work for some other state? And can you imagine Kentucky ever adopting it?
It's an idealistic goal, for sure, absolutely. But I do think that it can at least be tried in certain states. And then depending on how well it works, obviously it's a dream, but legislation or an amendment of some kind, extremely difficult to do, understandably, given the nature of the power that states have over elections. But I do think it's a better system of voting.
Well, we're ending right on that. Sorry, Sue.
How do you make it work in Kentucky?
The time just came up.
Yeah.
I want to know.
I know. I think that's a great question. Well, thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
You can breathe now. Feel good, Ben. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Can I start, John?
Sure.
May I? I loved the conversation. Thank you. Makes my day to have these types of conversations, because it's very rarely that I could go out and have these types of conversations with folks around. Really thoughtful in terms of answering the first kind of set of questions. I think you did a nice job in guiding us through that. I'm a history person. I'd like maybe a little bit more kind of the history of how we got to where we were. But I think you came back, you did get the what the founders were, which is what the question is asking. And then you went into proposing ranked choice voting. You went from the concept of a dual party system, and then your alternative is ranked choice voting. I'd like to hear just a little bit more of a flow from kind of this dual party system, and something we were talking about in the follow-ups as well. And why is ranked choice voting maybe an option for that? How does that really get rid of a two-party system, or how does that give opportunities? I heard some of it, but I'd like to maybe hear more of that flow and how you got to that choice. Nice to bring out Politico up for my question about that balance between the two. I felt some disconnection between, you know, how you started with the trustee and then you ended with, you know, giving people more of a choice and voice, and trying to balance that. And that's maybe where that Politico comes into term. But I really loved the conversation in talking through these really difficult ideas. So thank you.
Sue?
Excellent job. That was a terrific way for us to get to start our day. And you did something that I've never heard a team do before, and I have to thank you. Madison hated the Connecticut Compromise. He tried multiple times to get it undone and failed. And finally, one of his colleagues had to say, let it go, Jamie, let it go. But you're absolutely right. And that Connecticut Compromise has been bedeviling us ever since. And Madison didn't think the system could work because of it. So, boy, when you really get to the core of something like that, it's terrific. I wish you had shown how that compromise has played out in terms of theories of representation to create problems today. Remember that political parties are not constitutionally mandated. You may have identified a cultural problem that is even worse than our political structural problems. Because it's just a nasty habit that we have to political parties. Washington argued against them. Nobody assumed at the convention that there would be political parties. They've served a function, but perhaps that has come to an end. I also would have to push you on, as much as I agree with you, money in politics is a terrible thing. How do we fix that problem, especially given what the Supreme Court did in Citizens United? Have we just been boxed into a corner in this country that that we're going to have to do something pretty dramatic to get out of? I love your proposal for ranked choice voting. Where is it working? How is it working? How do you get Kentucky to adopt it? And how do you persuade Mitch McConnell that would be a good idea? I think you got a heck of a task ahead of yourselves. Thanks so much. Really good job.
Yeah, I have to commend you. I thought your arguments, you began well. You're well reasoned, well laid out, going from the historical framework of representation through many of the problems that representation has compounded over the years, and finally into the party problem and some of the solutions to the two-party increasing third-party participation. I would encourage you to give a little more detail on some of the solutions that you offer. Know that, yes, there are advantages to them, but know what the disadvantages are.
Yeah.
Be able to clearly define what those are and address how to minimize them. But overall, very well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.